What if you're already doing the job but didn't know it yet? Chris Varela didn't apply for a creative ops role. He just kept solving the problems between marketing and creative. He protected time, untangled messy handoffs, built better workflows. He made the process more efficient, more effective, and honestly, more fun for everyone involved. Then one day he realized, wait, this is a thing? This has a name? Yes, creative operations. And a little while later, his company realized it too. After years of leading without a title, Workday made the role official. And once it was named, everything changed. Visibility increased, collaboration expanded, the impact multiplied. In this episode, Chris and I unpacked what it means to build a role from the inside out. We talk about what it means to name a role you've already been living and how to help your org see it too. So if you've ever wondered, am I already doing this job or wished your org understood what you really do? Well, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Chris Varela, welcome to the Creative Ops Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. You've been a long time listener. You and I actually, you came up to me, I think, at the Henry Stewart Creative Ops Conference in LA 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And you'd found my original Creative Ops podcast from like 2016 or 17 when I did 10
Oh,
episodes. And you and a whole bunch of other people kept finding it and kept pinging me and going, "Hey, are you going to do another one?" And you walked up to me at that show and said, "Hey, are you going to do it again? Because those 10 episodes were really good and still relevant." And you found out about an hour later, after I did a talk on stage, that I was in the process of literally 2 weeks away from launching this version of the Creative Ops podcast again. So thanks for listening since 2017, and thanks for along with others, nudging me to do this again because it's been a blast.
of course. And you are a big part of my story actually, kind of unveiling this whole discipline that I didn't know that I was a part of, right? So when I discovered your podcast, it was like, "Oh, this is who I am." So it's just so great to have that as like part of my story.
Yeah, and that's sort of like a good segue into starting today, which is all about like your journey. And what I find fascinating about your journey, as you said, is like you started listening to those 10 episodes years ago. And you're like, oh, I'm sitting in marketing, but I actually think I'm a creative operations person, or that's what I'm on the edge of becoming. And there's lots of people who listen to this podcast who reach out to me who are project managers today or resource managers, or they're actually doing the job of creative operations, but they've stumbled upon the podcast and they didn't realize it yet. And they're like, okay, how do I make this official? How do I just sort of take that, like, that final leap and make that transition? So let's start there. Like, tell us a little bit about your background, in terms of your career background, and what were you doing? And was there like a moment where you went, oh, I'm actually a creative operations person? So what were you, and what was that sort of origin story of like, you know, becoming creative ops?
Yeah, the origin story of my creative ops journey, so good. I started working at a really small nonprofit event center, and they came to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone to kind of serve as a gatekeeper for our designers and copywriters, and we think you're a really organized, detail-oriented person. We think you'd be a good fit for this to kind of be that gatekeeper." And I was working with the creative team then as they called me the project manager, but my role really was gatekeeping. So much so that like I physically embodied it by they put my desk right next to the door. So as soon as somebody even cracked the door open, the first thing they would see is my face. So it's like I physically served as their gatekeeper for any marketer coming down trying to get a hold of the creative team. And it was more like, "Hey, I know you're trying to get a hold of a designer here, but I can probably help you first. They're really busy on a deadline. Let's leave them locked in and I'll help you." And so that kind of evolved and shifted. I moved over to C's Candies after that. And C's Candies, it's a beloved American chocolate company. And was on a small team and was hired as their producer. So you can kind of see even like as my career progressed, I was never had the title of creative operations manager, but so much of my role was creative operations. First, I was a project manager, gatekeeper person. Then I was a digital producer doing essentially the same thing. And so kind of felt like the discipline never really had the right terminology for what this role was. And so I just kind of adapted to make the role that was given to me what I wanted it to be in a lot of ways. And so at C's, I got to do a lot of that stuff that was more than just producing, more than just project management, but more systems thinking. Hey, what tools are we using? Can we be using these more efficiently? What are our processes? Can we make this process more efficient? Who needs to review these things? Do we really need this many reviewers? Does it really take this long to do X thing? And so asking those questions, I felt were more than just the remit of my job, right? Like I was a producer, I was a project manager, but I was asking higher level systems questions. And that's when I discovered your podcast. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing creative operations, but my job title doesn't say that. How do I reconcile that? And 10 years later, like I feel like I have reconciled that, but that's how long it has taken to kind of get to that point. Just kind of maybe speaks to a lot of what you talk about on your podcast today, which is creative operations is in its teenage years. How like there are certain companies that get it and have specific roles for creative operations, but most companies we're still not fully sure what the role of creative operations is in their organization because it's in its teenage years, right? There's no like mature discipline industry for it. And you've done a lot of work to advocate for it growing up in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the last part of my journey here is joining Workday. I am at Workday now today, and this has really been where my creative ops journey has accelerated a ton. Where I was hired as again a creative project manager, again a third different title, but essentially doing the same thing that I was doing at that nonprofit and at C's Candies, doing the same work, but at a larger scale. Right, Workday's a Fortune 500 company, a lot of revenue, and so the team is a lot bigger, and so kind of expanding that role to be more at scale.
So I want to dig into your Workday experience because that's really where I know you from, and it's been fascinating. But I love how at that first company, you literally set up your desk to almost be the creative operations bouncer. Like
Yeah.
you physically can't get past me into the creative team. Um, so it's like, yeah, you could even try and submit your brief, but you got to do that because you cannot get past the velvet rope without my permission. I love that. Maybe that's a reason to go back to office for some organizations is like
Seriously.
to have more deliberate you know processes and sort of like gatekeepers and things like that. And then C's Candies, yes, one of the best confectionery companies around. I think it's still owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company. Phenomenally well run business. And then Workday. So, Workday, you came into the marketing organization where you still sit today. You didn't, so you were sitting in marketing as a creative project manager,
Mhm.
but did they hire you to do the day to day things that most people would normally associate with creative project manager? And then did you just sort of naturally go, you know what? Like I've always done, I need to go like to the 50,000 foot level and look at this systemically. So tell us a little bit about like why did they pull you into the marketing org? Because Workday does have an in-house creative team. So why in marketing? Why not on the creative team? And maybe there was no like specific reason for it. It's just the way it worked out. And then tell me a little bit about like what was the role you were doing when you first joined Workday, and then we'll sort of get into how that's evolved over time.
Yeah, definitely. So it was an intentional decision actually to have me be on the marketing operations team rather than the creative team. The reason why is because uh, Workday made the strategic decision to consolidate all of the project managers into one organization. So we had project managers in different orgs kind of supporting that specific department, but they made the decision to consolidate all the project management um, roles into one org. And that actually created a lot of efficiency because I was able to learn from other project managers how they do things that they were not working with creative, but they had a lot of best practices that I was able to adopt as project manager. However, creative project management is not like other types of project or program management. And so there was this level of understanding that I brought to Workday of I understand creative. I understand the creative process, designers, copywriters, proofreaders, creative directors. I understand how these people work, and we cannot just apply standard rote project management to this team without adapting it a little bit. And so once I got there, it was be the creative project manager. But just like in my all the other roles, it was I was pretty quick to identify, okay, there's more that we can do here. Systems thinking, right? How are we leveraging the tool the right way to get the most out of it, specifically Workfront. And so we did a lot of optimization on Workfront to make sure that it was giving the creative team what they needed in order to be successful. So that was like one big thing. And I'm
Sorry,
forgetting one of
before
your
we go,
questions. Sorry.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
before we go down the tools front, I'd like to
sure.
stick a little bit on just sort of like marketing operations and creative working together, and then just like sort of the people aspect of it, right? So you're sitting in marketing operations because of your background and experience. You had a hands-on appreciation and understanding of the creative process.
Mhm.
Um, so when you first joined, was there sort of like was it like marketing operations was just firing requests off to creative, and it was almost like service bureau mentality? Hey, we're running these. We need to execute on these campaigns. Here's what we need by when. Send it to us by these dates. So what was that sort of like relationship like between marketing operations and creative, like when you joined on day one? And talk me through how that has sort of evolved, because you're sitting within marketing ops, you understand what marketing needs, you have the background from your own creative operations background of the creative process. So like what were the things that you were doing to like create that that understanding connective tissue, almost being the United Nations translator and connective tissue between marketing ops and the in-house creative team?
Yeah. It was a little bit of a service bureau sort of situation, and still is. I mean, creatives teams in general are service organizations, right? They're kind of at the behest of the overall marketing strategy, and creative gets a seat at the table when it comes to defining marketing strategy. But at the end of the day, they're the ones executing the creative. So how it would work was, I mean, our marketing managers would come in and to, I guess, the marketing ops team and say, hey, we need to execute this. Here's all the deliverables. Here's what I need. Go get it done. And so we would work with not just creative, but all the other resource teams involved. And the creative teams was slotted into a part of that project. So there was like a large project where we'd have a lot of different things being done, and creative team had one section of that project that they needed to get done. Now, how it worked was we have a team of project managers who do not specialize in creative, but rather campaign execution. And so their roles was to work with creative, but it wasn't their main priority. And so when I came in, it was like, no, my priority is creative. And so I need to make sure that when these other project managers on our marketing ops team are executing a project, that they're effectively working with the creative team and giving the creative team what they need within their project, even though those project managers are not experts in creative. And so it was a lot of like enablement on my end of making sure to educate, hey, project manager, this is how the creative team works best. Here's how to implement those best practices into your project. Simple things like make sure that you give them the right links, or make sure you put things in a place where they don't have to dig around to try to find the information that they need. Or, hey, at the very least, just check that the brief has all the fields filled out, right? Like, you don't need to know all the details of the brief, but just make sure that it's filled out, like at the very least, right? So simple things like that, and then setting up the workflow to make sure that it was consistent across all of the project managers, right? We have one process that the creative team goes through step by step, make sure that it's consistent no matter who is the project manager. So there are some like lack of alignments that exist just because of, I mean, Workday is a big company and we're at scale and we do hundreds of projects a week. And so making sure that there's alignment and that the process is consistent, regardless of what project manager is managing a specific project that involves the creative team, it's difficult, right? Aligning is hard, right? And everybody's coming in with their own notional understanding of who creative is. And so trying to make sure that everyone's enabled to work with them the right way. I think that's a lot of like what I do today actually is helping from a system standpoint. Like, let's make sure that the team is being worked with consistently so that, like, if a designer is working on a project with one project manager and then the next day they have to work on a different project that has a different project manager, that designer should not have to like oh, I'm working with this project manager today. They have a slightly different workflow than the project I was working on yesterday. Like, it shouldn't be that jarring for them to move from project to project, regardless of who the project manager is. And so I guess that is where my connective tissue kind of role comes into play, is making sure that I'm translating what the creative team needs out to all the project managers who have to manage their own projects.
And those PMs again sit on the marketing ops team, right?
Yeah, they do.
It's does the creative team have their own PMs?
It's complicated.
Okay, that's the
That's
best answer.
Yeah, I know. The short answer is no, but the
Okay,
longer answer is they have titles on their team called producers that
okay.
certainly function. I mean, if there was a Venn diagram between project manager and producer, I mean, the Venn would be, that's a lot of overlap between the two. So there are some pockets of the creative team that do have dedicated producers, but for the most part, they're not doing pure project management. That's on the marketing ops team.
Yeah, to me, producer seems to be more tilted towards like the a focus on the work itself, the
Yep.
quality of the work, the impact of the work. A project manager is focused on like um, we have deadlines, we have budgets, and we have time to market, all those things. So yeah, there's some overlap, but there's definitely white space between the two.
Yeah.
And so now, like, beyond just like how you sort of make this come to life in, the systems you're using, you mentioned Workfront. If a new PM comes into the marketing ops group, do they sort of get an onboarding into here's who the creative team is, here's how they work, here's what you should know about the creative process, or do they simply just go, tell me what the process is, and I'll follow it?
Probably more the latter than the former. And
Okay.
I again, like, I have a new role, right? Like, my
Yeah.
role is on the marketing ops team, but my entire remit is to support the creative team. Like, the whole everything I do is in support of the creative team, and that's something that we're working on, is an engagement model. Here's who the creative team is, here's how to work with us, right? Like, that document, that engagement model has not been built. We're working on it and we're really close, but it needs to exist, right? So that when a new person comes on, they know everything there is to know about working with the creative team without me having to, like, do a 2-hour seminar on everything creative, right? So it doesn't exist. But I mean, I guess so today, like, let me just tell you what we do today. Like, today, it's we have like robust templates, right? And so when a new person comes on, they have access to these templates that they can use to build out their projects. And those templates are refined and honed in to have the exact steps that are required to get the project done. And creative is a part of that. And so we've helped define, here are the steps in this specific template that the creative team has to follow. Make sure you're getting it done. And so it really is more the latter, like you said. Yeah.
So as you look ahead,
Yeah.
well, actually, before we start to look ahead, part of the reason I wanted to do this episode is that with you specifically, and again, going back to where we started,
Yeah.
you've been on this journey of saying, "Hey, my title is X, but really what I'm doing is Y." And that recently sort of became official, right?
Yeah, it did.
So what's your title today?
My title is manager of. Let me make sure I get this right. We rebranded. Our PMO is no longer called the PMO. We're actually called the Global Strategic Delivery Office. So it's another word for PMO. But my job title is Global Strategic Delivery Office Brand and Creative Team Manager.
Okay.
So it's I mean, more or less creative operations.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I find it interesting that brand and creative are tied together. I'm seeing that more and more out there because I think there's this growing realization that the creative team have to be the stewards of the brand because I think the CMO's got way too many things on his or her plate.
Mhm.
And CMOs have really become more about short-term execution and delivery against the funnel versus sort of bigger think brand. That's a gross oversimplification and generalization, but I do find it interesting that brand and creative are increasingly tied together in people's
Mhm.
titles
Oh yeah.
on the creative team. And as you sort of think ahead, you're still in the marketing ops team. You're not. Let's assume you're going to stay there. You're not moving there from there. What are some of the things you want to do to create more of that connective tissue between marketing and creative? Because you've been doing a lot of that, probably more down at the like day-to-day execution level. But you're a systems thinker. As you sort of zoom out, what are some of the things you want to do to create more of that connective tissue?
Yeah, and that was one of my first goals, right? Like as soon as this it's a new team, right? And I'm a manager now, so it's a whole new team that we stood up. But one of my main goals was to create alignment and partnership between marketing ops and creative. And I kind of think about, Lord of the Rings, how like uh, elves and men once used to have like this tight partnership, and then like they drifted. But then when Helm's Deep came, they like there was this line, it's like elves and men used to have like a tight partnership. Like,
Right.
let's bring that back today. So like I kind of like really resonate with that, as like elves being marketing ops and men being creative. Like that's just like a funny analogy. But one thing that I like was really intentional about, like the day that the new team was stood up, was okay, I need regular meetings with the VPs. Right, we have two VPs of creative, and then there's a SVP of creative, and so now I have like biweekly syncs with them, and it's not just biweekly syncs. Like, yeah, we have a meeting, but we talk every day about their priorities, operational priorities, and I feel like I've become one of their biggest advocates for process, and their biggest advocates for communicating their operational priorities. And so I'm almost like taking some of the inputs that they're saying are important and blasting that out to the rest of the org, specifically my boss and all the way up through marketing operations and the rest of the marketing team. And so creating alignment, like it would not happen if I didn't have the role that I have, which is kind of weird, right? How like the organizational friction was unlocked as soon as it was like, okay, Chris, this is your role now. Go forth and start working, right? So that was my biggest priority, and like we've made a lot of progress. I mean, even yesterday we had a great meeting with the SVP of marketing ops and then the SVP of creative, and me and the VPs, we were all telling them, here's what we've done so far. It's only been a couple months, but it's like tighter alignment on priorities, greater visibility on challenges, like just a totally renewed set of momentum and partnership, and we are working together through all kinds of issues that we weren't working on before. So it's kind of cool.
So these issues weren't getting worked on before you officially moved into this role, right?
Yep.
Which I think is interesting because, again, somebody might be listening to this going, "Well, I'm already doing the job. Why do I need the title? Why do I need leadership to sort of say, oh, this is now my title and the accountability,
Mm,
the assumed accountability that comes with that." But I think your example really shows that once somebody is officially put into the role, it starts to open up the aperture of conversations. Like the previously, like the SVP of creative and maybe the SVP of marketing operations, they would maybe talk to each other, but you're doing it with purpose and you're acting again as that translation layer and then executing on what are the changes we need to make. So
yeah.
it sounds like you're sort of that communications connective tissue for the executives. What are their respective priorities? You were stepping back and systemically thinking about like what are the changes we need to make that you know doesn't like 100% serve everybody but serves the business. Like what do we
Yes.
need to do in terms of creative process, marketing ops processes, and how do we need to operate? And that sort of then gets comes down from that 50,000 foot level down to the 1,000 foot level in terms of how are
Mhm.
we executing daily.
Yeah, and it has to start. It has to start up there, which is it's just so crazy because like before it was like, yeah, I was doing all this kind of work, but as soon as the team got stood up, it was like this unlock of, oh, like, oh, Chris is here now. Let me tell him what's going on. Right. And so like I don't know, like people's brains kind of like shifted on the creative team, where I was getting unsolicited, hey Chris, I heard you're in this new role. Can I tell you my challenges? All across creative. It was incredible. And so I was able to document this list and like really like hone in and synthesize what are the main issues here, synthesize it, go to the 50,000 foot level with the SVPs and say, here at a high level, here are our challenges and here's what we're going through. Here's how we're trying to fix it. And so none of that would have happened if the new team that I'm on wasn't stood up. So it's just so weird. Like, yeah, I've been doing the role, but in a unofficial kind of grassroots kind of way. The new team unlocked the formality of it existing and totally changed people's mindset on how marketing ops and creative are partnering together. So just really interesting. I just, you know, if anyone is feeling frustrated about that sort of thing, it's like part of it's true. It's like if you don't have the title, there's a certain level of work that you're just not going to be able to get done.
Yeah, I mean, the Pollyanna in me says titles shouldn't matter, but
I know.
the realist in me says they do, right? Because
Yeah, it's a bummer.
yeah, I mean, we hire lawyers because they're called lawyers, not people who know how to argue well. And we hire accountants because they've got an accounting designation and that's their title, not because guy who's good with numbers. It's yeah, I mean that's that's the reality of it. Like titles help people understand, especially in organizations, even small ones, but especially big ones. Like, is there a place for me, a person for me to go to and express like what I think we need to, what might be challenges, and or is somebody going to be able to do something about this?
Yeah.
And now that you've officially moved into the role, you can. And I'm really curious to know, as much as you can share, based on these conversations you're having, like, what does creative misunderstand about marketing or marketing ops, and vice versa? What does marketing ops and marketing misunderstand about creative?
Yeah, that's so funny. And it's what's been funny about this whole thing is that marketing ops and creative have we've gotten a lot more alignment in the sense that, oh my goodness, we have some similar challenges, right? Like it's not that marketing ops doesn't understand creative and creative doesn't understand marketing ops. It's just like a coming together to be like, oh my goodness, we have the similar challenges with our marketing team in general. And I think the main misunderstanding is why does it take so long to do X, right? And a lot of it is just a lack of understanding of how things get done around here. I think just in general, marketers come in and want to work with the creative team and think, oh, it's super easy. All I need is X. But it's like, well, actually, you're saying that you need X, but really you need Y, Z, and ABC, So it's like this lack of understanding of what it takes to get something done. And actually, when you say you need one deliverable, you really need five in order to get it done. So that's part of the education that marketing ops and creative are partnering together to do is, hey, marketers, here's how things get done. And
How are
here
you
is
doing that? Like, how are you doing that education?
yeah, and it goes back to the engagement model. One thing that we're standing up, and man, this should have happened years ago, is a tiering model for creative. Is every single project that involves creative is going to fall into one of four tiers. And I don't need to get into what the tiers are, but the basic idea is the higher the tier. So tier one is like the most important work, all the way down to tier four, which is the least important work. But along with that comes SLAs and different levels of creative involvement that has just not been super clear to the marketers, where they're not fully understanding my project is a tier one project. So it's being treated with like great care and great involvement. And it might be taking longer because there's extra levels of review that need to happen. And so they don't realize that that's what's happening, right? They just see, here's my project, I need to get it done, right? Or something is falling in that tier four category and they're not getting any attention at all, but they're not realizing that that's the case. And so it's just how we're circulating that is it's through like a slide deck and certain levels of communication on Slack and email and all that and enablement sessions and things like that. So
So you keep using the term enablement sessions. Is that like you do a session with an individual person on the marketing team, or like a group of marketers, or maybe somebody new coming into the marketing organization, and you just sort of walk them through like, here's how we get campaigns pushed out the door, and here's the steps it goes through. Here's like what you should be aware of in terms of like if you're asking for something that looks like X, here's like the work that actually needs to go into it. It's not as simple as like clicking a few buttons. And I know it sounds so like simple, but people often just don't know like what actually goes into this? And I think the problem's going to get worse now with AI, where everybody's like,
Yeah.
but I could put this one sentence prompt and it's like generating like all this content and images and videos like on the fly. Like, why can't the creative team do that? Because, well, creative thinking is like still a thing.
Storytelling.
Yep.
Yep. And that, I just like that, definitely that disconnect of like, no, what you're asking for is storytelling, and AI cannot tell a story as good as our creative team can yet, right?
Yep.
But I mean, when it comes to enablement sessions, again, this is stuff that we're still in progress on. Like I don't necessarily have like a fully baked communication plan of how we're rolling this stuff out, but in general, it's a combination of making sure that we have leadership alignment with our marketing team, right? Our go to market field marketing managers, our campaigns leads, our resource teams at a higher level, right? Making sure our leaders understand, hey, this is the engagement model. How can we communicate this best to your team? And kind of letting them advise whether it's, oh, maybe we have an all hands coming up on in a couple weeks. Maybe you guys can join that and give your presentation. Or, oh yeah, here's the Slack channel that all my team is on. Post in there and then make yourself available. So there's varying ways to enable people, but really it does kind of hinge on each department and making sure that the leaders of those departments are advising us on the best way to get the word out.
Yeah, you sort of you've got a fascinating role because in many ways you sort of live in this gray zone, right? Like
Yeah.
your career background is working directly on the creative teams as a creative ops lead, whether you had the title or not. You're doing the work. You came into Workday as a creative project manager. You couldn't help yourself, still doing the systems level thinking. And over the course of years, because you really earned it through the work you did, people saw the value of like, no, this what Chris is doing is something more than we brought him on board for. And now you've got a team around you that's supporting you and doing this. But it is sort of in a gray zone. Like you live in marketing operations in terms of who you report to, so their KPIs matter. Um, and but you're trying to create like that right sort of connective tissue with creative. Many people who do creative operations in the creative team often don't take the time to have a full appreciation for what marketing ops or marketing writ large is up against. And very often the marketing team doesn't take the time to understand what the creative team is up against. So I think the work you're doing is probably uncomfortable at times to sit in marketing ops and sort of be that connective tissue. But it might be a model for other organizations. And I know there's been this debate in the creative ops world around should creative ops sit within marketing operations. Amy Strickland did an episode with me last year, I think, or the year before. And it certainly got me a lot of DMs. Some of them not so gentle, but that's okay. It's part of the value that we bring to the audience. Yeah, I do think it's worth like other organizations thinking about like, could this model work for us? But you need the right kind of person in the role.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know, like if it were not me, if it were not Chris Varela, what would the role look like? I mean, how would this
Yeah.
whole thing have happened if it was somebody else and not me? So part of it is like a tailoring to what are Chris's unique sets of skills, and this is the right place for him. I think is kind of what the leadership was, maybe the decision behind that was. But I did want to comment about that is I have my PMP certification, which, a creative ops person rolls their eyes when they hear that, right? So I have this like really traditional set of classical training on how to manage projects from beginning to end. And I just, that has served me so well. And so I do recommend creative operations people get their PMP because it gives them a level of understanding of the rigors of detailed project management. Not that you're going to need to use it fully all the way through, but man, there are some fundamental truths within that training that I apply every day. So even though I have it, I don't, like manage projects the way that the PMI asked me to, but I leverage definitely some skills from it often.
You and I can have that debate in another episode. Because,
Yes, I love it, man.
I will take the I'll take the other side of that, and a lot of my perspective is changing because of AI.
I was gonna say that we should talk about that because I'm doing a lot today with AI.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I want to change the subject at all, but
No, let's go off on a tangent. That's what we do here. It's a
okay.
conversation at a coffee shop. I think PMP designations are good if people take them for like the to help them understand like strategy, to help them understand like how do I work through the X factors, which are usually the human factors of a project. Because I think all the algorithmic work of like how do we sort of manage limited resources with priorities and lots of requests and things that we could be doing, that's algorithmic work. And I think where the PMP designation needs to lean more heavily into is what today most people would call like the soft work, the people
Yep.
work, the strategy work, the stuff that algorithms aren't yet great at figuring out. They could be co-pilots and they could be sort of thinking partners through the process.
Yep.
I think a lot of PMPs that I see get way too. They basically adhere to the PMP rules like it's religion, and I think that's wrong.
It is. It is. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point about AI is, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but the amount of productivity gains that I have had in the past like 2 months, we're a Google Gemini shop, and the productivity gains that I have had are cannot be understated. And I know that's so cliche at this point, but like I'm 10x more productive because I'm able to use AI and like thinking through the systematic things that are part of like a PMP kind of classical training. Like honestly, I could probably today talk to a person about a project that they want to run, take the transcript,
Yep.
put the transcript straight into Gemini and say, "Hey, build a schedule network diagram for me." And it'll do it, right? I just need to have the conversation with that person and make sure I'm asking the right questions in that conversation, which kind of leads me to like one topic that I'm curious your thoughts on is like I have completely revolutionized the way that I approach specifically project management right now is I don't take notes anymore. And I like my hot take for the world is like we have too many meetings during a day for us to constantly have to focus on listening and paying attention and taking notes. It's just not possible for the human brain to do that over and over again on back-to-back meetings on a daily basis. Like I understand that, putting pen to paper, there's a magic to that, right? Like physical pen to physical paper, there's a magic to taking notes when it comes to memory retention, but not in corporate America, right? I mean, we have too many meetings. We won't remember things. So,
Yeah. I can't remember whose podcast I was on. I said, I think if we start to use AI in the right ways, and well, you follow me on LinkedIn. I think I'm getting increasingly ragey on LinkedIn about
yeah.
what I'm seeing with AI.
Yeah, man.
But I think we need more rage because most
Yeah.
people I'm seeing are just like walking themselves into like AI oblivion.
Yep.
But anyways, I'm not going to rage here. We're
I'm
okay.
100% with you, man. For what it's worth, it's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I constantly say, and I've got a couple of AI ventures, and one of them, one of our sort of mantras is the conversation is the work.
Yes. Yes.
And I've said on somebody else's podcast that if we approach AI in the right way and we understand that conversation is the work, we're going to love going to meetings because I don't take notes anymore. Even in prepping for podcasts, just to give people a bit of a peek behind the curtains, like I send you an outline. All right. I basically took the transcript of calls we've had, and then I love using the voice interface with ChatGPT, and I just
Oh,
sort of
nice.
work through like what's the line of this episode, what would be interesting to touch on, what would be valuable to the audience, and I send it through a series of prompts that basically have an understanding about creative operations professionals and creative project managers and even CMOs and things like that. And I put together that outline. I don't hand write it. And I can go back and interrogate it now, right? I could take the transcripts from all 40 plus episodes I've done and I can interrogate it for like what's interesting. Or, I've even thought about starting you know, what would people on the creative ops podcast say? Like somebody's got a question, they could go to this bot and
That's
ask
great.
it, like, what do you think I should do? Here's my situation. But the conversation is the work. If
Yeah.
people are not recording their meetings, as you said, they're distracted during the meeting and they're not collecting the most valuable data in the world,
Yep.
which is the conversations.
Yep.
And we should definitely be doing it in our professional lives. I know of one guy who has publicly talked about he and his girlfriend use it for like when they do their relationship check-ins, so that when they
No.
do it like once a month, they'll have ChatGPT in the conversation. I'm not advocating for that. I did suggest it to Gloria, my girlfriend. Bit of a hard no, but I thought it could be an interesting experiment. But we'll see. Maybe I'll bring that up a little further down the line. But it's yeah, the conversation is the work. You should be
Yeah.
able to pay attention. I will say though, I still love writing by hand
Yep.
when I'm journaling, when Gloria and I have this shared journal about like one of these couples journals, you each answer the same question. I want to do that by hand because there is something very true, and I think this has
Mhm.
been proven in like multiple studies. There is this connection between our brain and the act of writing
Yes.
that deeply reinforces those ideas. But for customer calls, internal meetings, everything else, like I was talking to a guy at, I won't mention the company because he probably listens, and fairly large company. And he was like, I got to prepare for a presentation to my CEO. And this guy's got like a memory, like, like you wouldn't believe, like he doesn't forget anything. So I'm not sure how to prepare. And I'm like, well, do you have, like, meeting notes from the meetings with him from the last 2 years? And, like, memos he shared and things like that? And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Cool." Like, dump him into ChatGPT and, like, bring it into the meeting with you, and then turn on the voice input tool. So,
Yep.
there's so many things that you could do with that,
Yep.
and I love the fact that you're using it to apply your project management thinking,
Yep.
so you're not outsourcing your thinking work to AI, you're outsourcing the doing work. And I say the mindset transition everyone needs to go through is from doing work to thinking work.
Yes.
And that's what people
Yeah.
are uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I agree. It's so fun. I mean, you said so many things. I'm just like, I cannot agree with you more. And something I've noticed is like the conversation is the work. Like I've like adopted that to the nth degree. Like every single one of my meetings, I need the transcript because I'm fully present, fully listening. And but what comes along with that is I better. And this is like I talk about reskilling. This is now like the most important part of my job is making sure that those meetings are really, really good, right? Like I
Yeah.
need to make sure I'm asking the right questions because if I don't, shoot, I'm missing information now. So like reskilling, right? Like my skills and like my team's skills as creative ops people, like they need to knock meetings out of the park. They need to approach these meetings with empathy, making sure that they're getting the answers that they need, making sure that like the person that they're talking to feels comfortable enough to share whatever they need to share and that the outcome of that meeting will serve as the backbone for the work that needs to get done. But if you're not leading a meeting correctly, like you're in trouble, you know?
Yeah. So like let's go down the rabbit hole a bit here. I
Yeah.
love the fact that you're recording your meetings because there's
Yeah.
like this is such low hanging fruit. It's like
100%.
literally press record and then put them in a Google Drive or whatever system your company uses. And now you could do so many things with it's basically a data asset now.
Yes.
So if I'm a creative ops person, here's what I'm doing with it. One is I am going, cool, I need to prepare for my next meeting. And maybe it's a status meeting. What have we discussed in the last 10 meetings that need to be surfaced in this meeting? In the meeting, you could actually have those transcripts uploaded. And if things are sort of like, hey, what did we say? Because humans have horrible memory, right? Like, what do we say? What do we agree to? just ask ChatGPT because it's got the transcripts. Cool. Like, oh yeah, thanks. The meeting gets so much more productive and it moves faster and people aren't frustrated by like,
Mhm.
no, did you say that? But I thought we said this. Like, what's going on? And then here's the thing I love doing with it. Again, very low hanging fruit.
Mhm.
The more these things you gather, and you only literally need a couple of them. So let's say there's a person named Bob on the marketing team who he's got a big campaign going out the door, and he's going to be involved in the review process, right? Of the copy, the creative, things like that. Well, you could use those transcripts, and let's say Bob's LinkedIn profile. I used your LinkedIn profile to build a profile of you as part of like prepping for this podcast. And it took literally 10 seconds. And it was sort of like oriented towards like the Creative Ops podcast, um, my why and our audience and things like that. So you could take a transcript, Bob's LinkedIn profile, and build a Bob profile. So
Nice.
imagine allowing the creative team, or let's say you had 10 transcripts of the last 10 times Bob was giving feedback on things, or the last 10 emails where Bob was going, here's what I like, what I don't like. You can now build a version of Bob, an AI Bob, that your creative team can use
That's
to
beautiful.
go, what will Bob say about this? And I do this all the time. Like when I'm sending out like a proposal or something that's really impactful, um, I go, what is Susan going to think about this?
Mhm.
And then like write the email that Susan will absolutely want to open and will almost be unable to say no to. Because it has you could pull out an understanding of Susan and what matters to her. So it's not manipulation. It's like, our job is to give Susan what she wants, but also balance it with what, like in a creative perspective, like what the brand needs, what the business needs.
Yeah.
Um, so you can do things like that, and it's low hanging fruit. And again, I don't understand why more creative ops people aren't like you and just going like, let's just do these things, or like turn the conversation into the brief. Like
Yeah.
that
I
would
mean,
just like blows my mind that people are still like doing
yeah.
manual entry or manually written, like typing out briefs. And I'm like, are you kidding me? The conversation is the work. That's where all the value is. That's where all the thinking is.
Yeah,
Record
and
it.
like it's becoming stable table stakes, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
not doing this, like what are we doing? And I think we're like as a society and as like as corporate workers, like we're moving beyond the oh yeah, let's explore how to use AI in our work and like how it can like save us time. We're moving beyond that to like no, how are you using AI to further your performance, right? It's not like a exploration anymore. It's no, this is like a requirement. And so, for me, like relating this to creative ops is like I can have like a creative ops manager who's really good at their job can serve as an intake manager for a person with a one-on-one meeting saying, tell me what you want. Give me the high level direction and then I will make sure to ask all the questions I need. 15-minute conversation, take the transcript, write the brief, send it to the creative team. Like
Yeah.
15
I'll even
minutes.
go one step further.
Yeah.
I just did this last week with the prospect for one of the companies I'm involved with. We sent him 7 questions and said, whenever it's convenient, just stream of consciousness.
Oh,
Just
so
do a
good.
voice note, right?
Yep.
And he did that while he was having breakfast at a hotel while he was on the road, sent it, and it was like, boom, we had all the prep we needed
Yeah.
to actually put together, like being more prepared than I've ever been for any meeting in my life. And it was totally bang on. And like he and his colleagues during the meeting were like, oh my God, like we have never seen somebody like come in almost like understanding exactly what matters to us and not just doing a dumbed down like cookie cutter like presentation. It was like it
Incredible.
was our presentation, and it was like, we know you guys didn't take a month to do this because we sent that to you like 24 hours ago. And it was just like, yeah. So it could be an in-person conversation. If it's something that's not as strategic, send the 7 questions,
Yeah.
and that's
So
it.
good. Yeah, the stream of consciousness. AI is so good at connecting dots and even like making
Yeah.
inferences on what a person is saying and translating that into like tangible writing, right? And so all we need is a stream of consciousness and AI will do the rest. Like that's so incredible. And I think, just getting really tactical to talk about like how else we're using AI at Workday, like from my end in creative ops is like our project managers. And when I say project managers, like I still have to manage some projects, but how I'm managing projects, like, it's important as a project manager to provide status updates regularly. And so how I'm doing this is much like in the way that you described is status meetings where we're talking live about the status. I'm asking the right questions to make sure that people are stream of consciousness, just saying where they're at with their work stream, taking the transcript of that. And like if I have multiple meetings in the week, I just dump the transcript into a Google Doc. But then taking that, sending it to AI and saying, okay, translate this into a status report and make it like a Slack post, and it'll do that for me. But like the next level of that that I've gotten a lot of value from is audio overviews. Have you heard about this in Notebook LM?
Yeah,
I can
yeah, yeah. I've
upload,
been using
yeah,
it like for a year now. Yeah, it's
yeah, it's
awesome.
it's so awesome, man. Like people are like blown away that I'm like taking these meeting notes, putting them into Notebook LM and telling Notebook LM, hey, create an audio overview, recapping the status of all the work streams and all the progress we've made in the past 7 days. It'll generate a podcast, an AI podcast, and I'll
Yep.
send that out with my communications on a status update. And I've gotten feedback from people, which is the exact feedback I wanted from these stakeholders. Hey, I love that audio overview. I'm able to listen to it while I'm walking my dog, or while I'm commuting to work, or while I'm doing dishes. And I'm like, that's exactly what I was hoping for. And so people are now like they're seeing the benefits of project managers and creative operations people using AI because they're the recipients of it, right? They're the beneficiaries.
Dude, I wish more creative ops people were doing what you're doing because
Oh, cool.
this is the work is to like embrace the technology
Yeah.
and create new value out of it. Like status updates, everyone hates doing status updates because it's soul sucking work. But now you could like go, here's what a status update needs to look like. And you could give that to ChatGPT,
Yep.
and then you could write a prompt and or get AI to write the prompt to say, I need a prompt that's going to output something that looks like this. And I'm going to have inputs that are going to be text, voice, screenshots, and things like that. And we did this for a webinar for a marketing ops community recently. And it was just like, you know, okay, you could just like voice memo, stream of consciousness, like, oh, what's been going on the last week?
Yeah.
I'm going to take some screenshots from like our project management system and dump them in and things like that. And then it does all the work of like formatting and things like that. And then go one step further and say, give me the three versions: the one for my boss who wants all the details, the one for the CMO who just wants like top line 5 bullet points, and then the one for CFO who cares about anything that's like dollars and cents related, right? But you do the work once, and
Yes.
AI goes, oh, I'm going to create three versions for you for these different audiences. Like
Yep.
that would have been like pull the rest of your hair out type of work before.
And an
And
hour's more
now
effort.
yeah, it's low effort, but it's high value and high impact.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why people are not embracing this. Like, um,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I should do a show, Creative Ops AI, and just like
Yeah.
once a week. Hey, are you doing this with AI? Like, here's
Yeah.
an idea for you. Like, just a 15-minute thing. Go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have two other use cases that I'm really, I'd like to think I'm on the frontier of this with our organization. But creating AI agents, I think is probably the next level. I mean, everybody has heard so much about AI agents and how
Yeah.
our work is going to be less about doing the actual work and more about managing a swarm of agents, right? You hear that all the time. But I was just thinking, how do we apply that to creative operations? And like on my team, we have a request intake manager. His job is to intake all requests that come in from all of marketing and prioritize them, vet them, and assign them out to people. And he gets hundreds a week, hundreds. So this guy, like, if he leaves his computer for 45 minutes, like, he's screwed because someone might come in with an urgent request and he's just got a backlog now. But one of my
Right.
thoughts was, why can't we build an AI agent to take the information that is coming in make sure that it's all there, and ask any questions and interface directly with the requester to make sure that all the information is there. Right? I mean, this is not some like revolutionary difficult concept, right? But the idea is quite simple: is let's get some of the what's the word, wrote questions that he has to keep answering over and over again, and just have AI interface with this person directly to get all the information they need.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to figure out the right user experience of how we use AI agents and
Oh,
everything else, and how I still firmly believe, as you know from my LinkedIn post, that humans are still the navigators, because we're the ones that need to set the direction and determine
yeah.
what do we want to create with these capabilities. Maybe one day AI will have a sense of what I call tomorrow, like what do we want to do next? Why do we want to do it? Um, we're going to have to figure this out, but we do have these new superpowers, and we could all start to operate with them. You're clearly doing it already, which sort of brings us back to you and your career evolution. You're now a creative operations person that sits within marketing operations, um, and it's had a huge impact at Workday. I know this because you and I have talked about this quite a bit over the last couple of years, and I think this might be a model. But now you're embracing AI. Are you going to become like the creative ops AI person, or the AI person for go to market? Because I think the other thing that's coming now is um,
Hmm.
marketing ops, rev ops, sales ops, creative ops. It's all part of the go to market engine in most organizations. And I do want to ask you one other thing about creative before we wrap up today, but we'll see if we get to that. All these ops roles are starting to come together. And I think what AI is going to do is going to force breaking down the walls between all these ops roles, because AI doesn't think in silos unless you force it to. AI most natively and naturally, and where it's most effective, is where it operates horizontally,
Hmm.
because ultimately it's about getting an outcome. And most organizations today, there is so much wasted effort because
Yeah.
everyone's organized into silos. And you've done like heavy lifting to break down those walls. I think AI allows us to accelerate that, but I think it's bigger than just marketing ops and creative ops. I think it's go to market.
Yeah, I agree.
So are you going to become the AI guy? Is that the next career evolution for Chris Varela?
I don't know, man. I got a lot of people coming to me asking about my AI wizardry, and that's like it's not a secret.
Yeah.
Like I don't have some special mojo that allows me to leverage AI in a different way than you. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I think it's tough because there's a lot of AI tools that are specifically for creative, right? Like image generation, copy generation,
Sure.
motion graphics, and live video. I mean, some of the stuff that what's the name of that one? It's not Mid Journey, but the one that does motion.
VO,
It is
VO, and Sora, and Runway.
Runway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of
Ru-
them.
I saw a demo of Runway that our creative team was doing, and it was incredible. And so there's all these AI tools that the creative teams are using that I just don't have a lot of insight into, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying those won't be like role specific. I'm just saying the operational layer
Yeah.
will probably start to get a lot more horizontal, is my guess. And I think AI is
Yeah.
going to be an accelerant to that, like the ability to use AI as a thinking and a doing partner to streamline execution horizontally. Because ultimately, all those go to marketing roles, operations roles, are in service of, in theory, the customer and the business's funnel.
Yeah.
And but they're all like sort of disconnected because they live usually within functional silos.
Mm.
So we'll see what happens, but I think there is going to be uh, probably one of my many predictions that won't come true, but a go-to-market AI ops role um, is what I'm guessing, and I think it'll be that role that will be the person that um, is a systems thinker that designs a system and thinks about the rules of agent orchestration and how agents and humans collaborate together across this go-to-market stream of work.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk about that kind of makes me lean towards, "Oh, no, maybe I am headed that direction." I just love working with creatives so much, right? I love the magic that comes from a designer or copywriter getting together to build something amazing.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, and
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think it's gonna be one person, but,
Yeah,
there'll probably still be the creative ops person, but, they better have AI as part of their tool set, because if they don't, I firmly believe anyone who is not actively using AI right now does not speak the new language of business and value.
yeah,
Like, they are
yeah,
foreigners in a strange land,
yeah,
and they can't communicate.
yeah, I
Is,
would agree.
yeah. Well, Chris, why don't we, I think this has been a great, sesh. We talked about your career journey. I hope that people out there who are listening and thinking about making the move into creative operations, or maybe realizing, oh, I do creative operations, take inspiration from your story, because they should. I think this might reignite the should creative operations live in marketing operations debate, which is one I think we should be having
Yeah,
more of. And I think you're a great example of how there is so much easy value to unlock in using AI. Just like do it. It's not complicated. Like hit record and then upload your meeting transcripts to ChatGPT. And even if it's just for you, like start to talk to the meeting transcript or the last 10 that you had.
yeah,
And people heard us rhyme off a few other ideas of what they could do just with meeting transcripts, because the conversation is the work. And that's what great ops leaders understand is,
yeah,
yeah, the tech matters, the process matters, but it's the people. And the people work is rooted in conversation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The better we are at having conversations, the more successful we'll be, right?
Exactly, and AI could be an enabler by, being, our note taker, as you said, and being our memory, going like, "Hey, what did we say, like, 7 weeks ago?" It knows. It can remind us.
And you know what? That doesn't surprise. Sorry, I know you're trying to wrap up. That
No,
doesn't
no.
surprise me a ton about like how you're leveraging like transcripts and all that because you're such a fantastic conversationalist. And so like, why would you not? That is your genius, Nish. Is like
Yeah.
I'm gonna like so good at having conversations and asking questions. Like I want to focus in and double down on being really good at conversations and let AI do the rest. So I'm not surprised that you're doing it the way that you're doing it. And, I think I look up to you in a lot of ways of like, I want to also be such a good conversationalist that people who have a project are excited to meet with me to talk about it. Right. So, I just think it's like good inspiration that I don't know if you realize, but you're doing for me. So
Oh, thanks, I appreciate that, and, I've heard that from others. I do fireside chats now with companies who just want me to come in and talk about, like, the AI journey ahead. And somebody just did a testimonial for me, and she said people were referencing the conversation like weeks later, going, "Oh, we need to channel Nish in this meeting." And I love hearing that, because I do think that is my. Before we started recording, we are talking about zones of genius and zones
yeah,
of passion. I think that's my zone of genius, is conversation, which seems silly, but it's it reminded me of something I wrote and put out on my Prompting Humans feed, is human experience optimization. I believe is going to be the next great layer of value, and it's about the things that are innately human, and conversation is human. Conversation is stories. And stories are the original algorithms for how we figure out what do we want to do, and it could be as simple as a creative ops leader talk in a meeting with the marketing ops and creative team, and having a great conversation around what do we want to do and how are we going to do it, that's going to be allow us to produce amazing work and have a great impact, and everyone's going to have fun doing it. So yeah, lean into the conversation skill set, because that's one of the things that's not going away.
couldn't agree more.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll have to have you back to get an update on the career journey at some point down the road.
Of course. Thanks so much. And it's what a great conversation. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.